So once again, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas is my mentor in 2012. He did a workshop on networking research and a small conference in Jordan, and I learned a lot from him. So he has a big beard now, and he used to be, he's retired, but still he's teaching a lot. He's doing a lot of research. So over to
Yes.
Thomas.
All right, so
Okay.
sir, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
All right, I'll just put it.
Okay. So let me just give my personal background quickly. I was born and raised in atheist Denmark. And I want to emphasize that because what happened to me was that as a young boy, I went to the Middle East and I was fascinated by the traditional culture in the Middle East that was so different from what I grew up with. I studied math, physics, sociology at home in Denmark and in the United States, but I love to travel to around the world and especially to the Middle East, where I've been giving workshops on entrepreneurship research and on social networks in Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, Malaysia, China. That's the countries that are closest to you. And I've been leading surveys of entrepreneurship for the consortium that is called Global Entrepreneurship Monitor. We have been collecting data in also in Pakistan and the neighboring countries. And those data are publicly available on the web. And that is how I came to work with Schøtt several years ago. What that implies is all this travel, and I've lived in the United States, has implied that my family is actually quite multicultural. My sons were both born in the United States, and I just want to share a picture that I got with one of my sons. Can we have the next one, Taskin? Yeah, it's a picture of the multicultural family. And you can see my son, he is not quite as gray as me, but he actually married a Muslim woman from Senegal, Africa. So you see the color difference that makes it even very multicultural.
Oh, wow, your son and his wife from Senegal, a Muslim lady. Wow. Interesting.
Yes. It happens to be a picture that shows a little bit of the non-Muslim culture because we are drinking wine in France.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's move quickly on to the next one, Taskin, before we get into too much haram here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the basic ideas of networks as they pertain to entrepreneurship. And I'm going to adopt two units of analysis. We're going to discuss the network among entrepreneurs in a whole group of entrepreneurs. And then we're going to focus on one entrepreneur and then discuss the network around a single entrepreneur. So those are the two perspectives that I'm going to pursue for the next half hour. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss how this network is organized, what the sources of the network is, and what the consequences of the network is. But we're going to start with the network in a group of entrepreneurs. That's the top picture that I've drawn here. So next slide, Taskin. So we're discussing the network among a group of entrepreneurs. And first, we're going to discuss how this network is organized. And for that, we develop some concepts, because it's not enough to have the image of a network. We need to conceptualize it and say, what is it? What are the properties of the network that we're interested in? And the first property of a network that we can look at using a little bit of that drawing is this network connected or is it disconnected? And the little drawing that I've drawn here for us is a connected network. Everybody is connected into the network. You can get from anyone in the network to anyone else in the network. We're going to discuss the importance of that connectedness. A second concept is this network dense or is it sparse? Is it full of a lot of connections, or are there only very few connections? We see in the picture that it's kind of in between here. And we're then later, in a few minutes, going to discuss the importance of that property of density. A third property that we can discuss about such a network as we see it is this network hierarchical or is it flat? And this one here, I would say is fairly hierarchical because there's some people in the network that are fairly central, and then there are some that are very marginal. So it is hierarchical. We see there are actually 3 persons in the picture that have 3 connections each. And then there's 1 person in the network that has only 1 connection. That shows the hierarchy of the network. We're going to discuss a little bit more about that. A third property of such a network is, are there cliques in it? And in this little network, there's a clique on the right side. There are 3 persons that are interconnected closely with one another. And then there are 2 people that are less connected. And we all know the idea of a clique from our school days. I bet you both in my country and in Pakistan, when you think back on your school days, you can think of cliques. At least I can think that in my school days as a young boy, there was the boys' clique and there was the girls' clique. And we would not mix with one another until a certain age, until we reached puberty or such. Then we would take an interest in the opposite clique. But until then, even though schools were mixed, we would not play with the other people of the other clique. Then we can ask ourselves about a 5th property. In this little network group, is there a center and is there a periphery? And I would say yes. There is a center. There are some that are more central than others. I would say the 2 people who are most connected on the right side, they form a center. But the 1 person who is far away and only has 1 connection, that person is in the periphery. So to some extent, this network forms a center and periphery. And we can think, do such center and periphery exist also in the big world? Yes, absolutely. The United States has been the center of the world for about a generation, right? Since the Soviet Union collapsed until, I would say, last year or so, the United States was the center. And for example, Pakistan was in the periphery of all that, and still is in the periphery of all that. And Schøtt was in his introduction talking about the colonial times when the United Kingdom was the center, controlling so much of the world, including what became Pakistan afterwards. So we have the idea of such a center and periphery, and I'm going to discuss in a minute the importance of these ideas. And they're ideas or concepts for describing how such a network is structured, how it is organized. So let's move to the next one, Saskin. The second aspect of such a network is its origins. Where does it come from? What are the sources of such a network? And Schøtt mentioned that I have a background in sociology. And in sociology, we think about culture, we think about common values, backgrounds, and we even put that into a proverb. In English, we call it birds of a feather flock together. I bet you have a similar proverb in Urdu, don't you? What is it called in Urdu, Schøtt?
Yeah, we call it that एक तरह के परिंदे इकट्ठे रहते हैं. A group of the same type of birds fly together.
It's like birds of feather flock together.
उर्दू में क्या कहेंगे ना, उर्दू में उर्दू में कोई बताएगा जनाब?
Well, thank you for introducing me to Urdu.
Yes. खुशामदीद.
Inshallah.
सब उल्टा सा कह सकते हैं आप.
जी.
Yeah, I'm slow, so I'll need it next year again.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Another source of such a network is not to think of it as something coherent as culture, but that network is more self-organized among people who are pursuing self-interest, like on a market. People enter into relations with one another because they have complementarities. One has something to sell, another one needs that, so they get into a spot exchange, and therefore they have market relations, which is quite different from the cultural origins of such a network. Then we have power as a source of networking. The center dominating the periphery is a prime example of that. And the fourth one is that we can think about even an exchange network as being embedded in some prior ties. That is to say, even when I engage in exchange, and a simple example is, I needed a plumber the other day. Who do I call? I don't look in the phone book for a plumber. I find out, who do I know who knows a good plumber? I use my network of my prior ties to engage in an exchange relation with a plumber. And we call that the embeddedness of a network in prior ties. You may know Polanyi wrote about that many years ago. Mark Granovetter wrote about that in more recent decades. And let's get the next one then, Saskin. The third thing I'm going to talk about such a network is, what are its consequences? Such a network has some cohesion to it. Especially politicians try to build cohesion. And a prime example I would say is Donald Trump in the United States, who's trying to build cohesion in the American nation, partly because he feels he's under attack. And the idea is that such cohesion will mobilize people to defend their community. So that's a network effect. Some politicians in the Middle East are the Israeli politicians. Especially, you may remember a man some years ago, Menachem Begin, who was building cohesion in the Jewish community in Israel in order to strengthen the military and political power of the country and to unite the country against what he perceived as the perennial Arab enemy. Then we can think about the network, if it has some cliques. What do cliques do? Cliques promote conflict. The internal cohesion of a clique is up against the internal cohesion of another clique. In my country, we see it played out in motorcycle gangs. One motorcycle gang fighting another motorcycle gang. These are some effects of network characteristics. We can think about a third property, centralization. What does centralization do? What's an effect of it? An effect is that it enables control. We see that played out macro socially in China. The centrality, the centralization in that huge country enables the Communist Party to exercise control. And you know it undoubtedly from the fate of the Muslim minority in China. I spoke about connectedness before, the connectedness in components and density. What that promotes is communication. A tightly organized network will promote communication, especially from the center if there is one. And you know from that the center periphery structure of the world enables exploitation. I think Shahid mentioned that in his introduction, the English colonization of what became Pakistan. So
Yes.
these are some of the consequences at this macro level, at the level of the whole community or group. And one application of that in entrepreneurship is that we have family businesses. Undoubtedly in Pakistan, more than half of the businesses are family run. That is, they have family ownership and family management. And what that implies is that when a business is run by a family in that way, the family is tightly interconnected. There's a dense, very dense and cohesive network running the family business. That is the core, that is the center of the family business. And then the family business will employ employees who are often outside the family, and they are the periphery when we think of it as a network structure. And then we can think about what are the implications of such a network for the business. And one implication that many people have been studying about family businesses is that the very cohesiveness of the family in the center of the business implies both advantages and disadvantages. One advantage is that there's a lot of trust within the family. Family members trust one another, which is a strength of the center of the family business. And maybe especially nowadays with the epidemic and the spread of people, the spread of the diffuseness maybe of the organization, it becomes very loosely organized. Maybe that is a particular advantage of family businesses and their tight internal network organization, that it may bring strength to the family business, especially during the epidemic.
Yes.
Puts a disadvantage, maybe that the family business is not willing to take risks. The family is very concerned with preserving its identity, preserving the wealth, and therefore be very little risk willing. Shahid actually mentioned in his introduction that this entrepreneurial spirit has been very weak in Pakistan. People have been reluctant in Pakistan to take risks. And maybe a family business is particularly reluctant to take risks because it may lose everything it has. So maybe it's better to be cautious. So that's an application of this to entrepreneurship. Okay, let's move on. Taskin. Now I want to switch perspective. I'm no longer going to talk about a group. I'm instead going to talk about a single entrepreneur who is surrounded by others, who then has a personal or own network. And I've drawn that where the entrepreneur is a little dot, a little black dot. You see it in the drawing. The entrepreneur here is connected to 6 others, and some of those others are connected, as I've drawn with little red lines.
Yes.
We're going to talk about those.
Can you point out the skin? Can you keep on pointing the mouse when Thomas talks? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think Taskin has control over it, and I don't.
Yeah, exactly. She's using this red, then she's using the mouse. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So, in the first part, I was talking about some properties of the network in a group. And in order to go beyond the image of a network as a metaphor and really be able to utilize it to talk more precisely about what is it, How is it it functions? What are the important characteristics of a network? We have some concepts. And some of these concepts, you know, some of them will be new to you. The simplest one is the size. How many contacts does this entrepreneur have? And in this little drawing, the entrepreneur has 6 contacts. So this network has size 6. Okay. But if you look at the network, would we say that all 6 are equally important, or are there some that are redundant? And I would say, if we just look at the top 2 people, the top 2 contacts, yes, Taskin, good. Those 2 people are connected. And what that means is that we can think of them as being similar, as knowing the same thing, and therefore maybe it's enough to have only to maintain contact with only one of them, and the other is redundant. That is to say, in a network, often there's redundancy. It is not so effective because what you can get from one, you may already have from another. Likewise, for the 3 at the bottom, those 3 contacts are interconnected. They are therefore likely to be similar. They are therefore likely to have the same resources, to have the same knowledge, and there's some redundancy among them. So instead of maintaining contact with 3 people who have the same thing, maybe it's enough for me as an entrepreneur to maintain contact with only one of them. So what we may say is that effectively, I'm connected to 6 people, yes, but maybe I can do with only 3 of them. 1 from the top, 1 from the bottom, and then the one to the right. We call that property the range. That is the number of contacts that are unique. Okay. And we're going to talk about the importance of that in a few minutes. A third property among that, such a network, is the density. The density is the links among the contacts. That's what's drawn by the red. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 links among these contacts. But when there are 6 people in the network around the entrepreneur, there could be a lot more. So I would say this network is fairly sparse. It is disconnected. Is that good or bad? Well, for some things it's good, for some things it's bad. Imagine that I'm extremely sick. What do I want to do? I want to have a network that can support me, that can organize support for me, that can bring me food every day. So if I have 6 people in my network, I would like them to be able to communicate among each other. That is to say, I would like the network to be dense so that they can coordinate among themselves and make sure that I get the care that I need when I'm extremely sick. If we think about a group of people engaged in production that's closer to entrepreneurship, we can think that for a routine production, that is exploitation rather than exploration. For exploitation, it's good to have a network that is densely connected, because then it's more able to coordinate the production and to share knowledge that is needed for the production. Routine knowledge, standard knowledge. A fourth property is the components. And when we look at that little drawing, we can see there's a component at the top of 2 people that are interconnected. There's a component at the bottom of 3 people that are interconnected. And then there's a small, tiny component to the right. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. On my screen, it's covered by the nice people looking. But if you
the horizontal line you're talking about?
Of the pictures that are, no, there's one more line on the right.
The black horizontal line, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, it goes, but okay. that's the components, and we'll discuss the importance of that in a minute. Then there's the diversity of a network. The diversity refers, I'm connected to 6 people here, yes, but are they diverse among themselves? Maybe, but maybe not, because they are interconnected. Such a diversity is important. It's important for an entrepreneur, because the greater the diversity, the more diverse input I will get. So we can think about the diversity in the as differences among the contacts. It can be difference in education, it can be difference in age, difference in gender, difference in industry that they're in, different in the kind of advice they can give me. So the greater the diversity, the greater the spectrum of input that I will get. The concept of diversity is different from the next one, homogeneity. Homogeneity refers to the similarity between the entrepreneur and the contacts. It is very homogeneous. Homogeneity is high if my contacts are of the same gender as me. If my contacts are all men, what will happen to me? Then I will become stereotypical in my thinking. I will get the opinion of men. I will do what men do. That's the homogeneity of it. It may be effective. It may give me some social support, but it will also mean that I will be stereotypical and prejudiced even in my thinking, because I will not be exposed to different ideas. And this is also important for the entrepreneur who is engaged in very innovative, hopefully innovative endeavors. Finally is the concept of structural holes. I'm going to deal with that a little bit later. But if we look at the picture, we can see that there are some disconnects. There are some in the network that are not connected with each other. And if we look at the little drawing, there's one at the top left, yes, exactly, Taskin, and one at the bottom left. Bottom left. Yeah, out there. Those two are not connected with each other. And we call that a structural hole in the network around the entrepreneur. And there's a theory about that, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But what I've done now is to talk about network organization, putting some concepts on the properties of such a network. And these concepts we're going to see in a minute are important because they have consequences. But before we get to the consequences, let's discuss what are the sources of such a network around a single entrepreneur. Well, we have a past. Every one of us has a past. And as Schøtt actually started in the introduction, is that, well, he said, I'm in his network, but I will say he's in my network, originating from 10 years ago, right? That's our past. And when I listen to talks about spirituality, and it happens, then I come to think of my discussions with Schøtt many years ago. So Schøtt is still in my network, even though it hasn't been activated. He's still there. You don't have to think of him as a ghost in the network, but he's still there. And I'm glad to see that he is kicking and alive. So what we have is, we have a past. We have a past. We can think in our personal network, it includes the family, and also the family is in an entrepreneur's network. I'm going to talk about that later. In my network, I have teachers. My teacher, I had several good teachers. One of them was a network expert, and he brought me into the world of network analysis. And the past that we have, we can think that that is not only instrumental, but that is effective. And that is actually what I indicated in the beginning. I can think of Shahid as a good friend. I have a certain affection for him. We were together only for a week or so in Jordan many years ago, but he pops up in my mind with affection. That's part of our past. Then we can think that we don't only live in the past, we live in the present. Entrepreneurs pursuing goals, instrumental goals, and for that an entrepreneur will seek out new people. Think of an entrepreneur as a person with limited knowledge, and that's really true. A person has very limited knowledge as an entrepreneur, and to be a successful entrepreneur, you really need a lot of knowledge, not very narrowly specialized, but you need a broad range of knowledge, typically, to be an entrepreneur. So what does an entrepreneur do? An entrepreneur seeks new contacts, doesn't live from the contacts from the past. And if the entrepreneur is smart, and most people are smart, the entrepreneur will seek out complementarity to the knowledge that the entrepreneur, him or herself, possesses. And that is instrumental. It is through the knowing new people that the entrepreneur will get new knowledge. However, how do we humans actually function in our selection of people? We don't seek complementarity. Actually, we humans seek the opposite. We are homophilous. That is to say, we like people who are similar to ourselves. We see that actually even when we go to conferences, we see our academic people sitting with the people they already know, rather than seeking out people that they don't know, rather than seeking out new inspiration. We sit with the people we already know, partly because it is most comfortable. We are in our comfort zone. We don't break out of it. So unconsciously, we seek similarity rather than complementarity. And I would call that dangerous or harmful for an entrepreneur. That is a part of the dynamic that goes on also when entrepreneurs are seeking out a network. Finally is the institutional context, which includes also policy for networking. I'm in a country where there's considerable policy for networking. The government has established organizations whose task it is to promote networking among entrepreneurs. The government actually establishes courses, training courses for entrepreneurs, where entrepreneurs not only get the message that networking is important, but they're actually getting training in networking. And if you are running incubators or deal with incubators or student entrepreneurs, what you probably are doing is you're training them in giving what the Americans call an elevator pitch. That is to say, a 2-minute pitch, because the Americans don't have patience to listen to more. You teach the students how to deliver a business plan, a business idea in 2 minutes. We call that an elevator pitch. And that is actually training. If you train the students in that, I do it with my students, they're not entrepreneurial, but they're academics, and they have to give an abstract, a 2-minute abstract of what they're doing for their dissertation. That is to say, there are policies for networking. Okay, that's about the sources of the network. Let's go to the consequences, Taskin. We have a concept that we call social capital. And the social, the word, the term, the concept, social capital refers to the capital that is social in that it comes from the network. It is the benefit. That's why we call it capital. We can benefit from it. It's the benefit that is accessible in the network. We're used to thinking that the more people you know, the better you're off. The benefit is proportional to the size of your network. However, as I just discussed before, the redundant contacts, they are a waste. There is an opportunity cost. You could have spent the energy, instead of knowing more people of the same kind, to get to know people that are different. So the concept of range is more efficient than size. That is to say, you get the same benefit by dropping some of your contacts. You get the same benefit for less cost. And finally, the concept of structural whole, or the property of structural wholes, enhance the innovativeness. And I have that on the next slide, because it's sort of a cute little theory. Taskin, let's get the next. The idea is that structural wholes enhance innovativeness of the entrepreneur. For example, if you look at contacts A and B, and you see them on the drawing, A and B, B is the one below. A, now imagine, A has a piece of knowledge, B has another piece. They're two different pieces of knowledge. A and B, they're not connected to each other, so they cannot combine their pieces into an innovation. If some of you will know the German writer, or was he Austrian, Schumpeter. Schumpeter wrote about innovation as being the combination of existing things. And that's what we're talking about here. But what about the entrepreneur here? The entrepreneur goes between them and takes an advantage that is in combining the knowledge from A with the knowledge from B. And actually, if you know French or Latin, what does the word entrepreneur mean? What's the origin of it? Entre means in between, and prendre means to take. So the entrepreneur is the one who goes in between, in this case, in between A and B, takes from A and B and combines it. That's actually Schumpeter's idea of innovative behavior, of what an innovation is. So the concept of structural whole captures Schumpeter's idea for what creates innovation. Let's go to the next Taskin. So what do we do? When we study entrepreneurs, we ask them about their networks, what is important, where do they get advice from? And we see when we ask entrepreneurs, they get advice from family and friends, they get advice from their workplace, from the professions, from the international sphere perhaps, and from the market. We can collect such data simply by asking entrepreneurs. And what we're tapping into there is the public sphere, workplace, professions, international, market, and we're tapping into the private sphere of family and friends. Let me ask you a quick question. What is important in Denmark? What is important in, for example, Pakistan?
Yes, so maybe you can write on the chat box. Everybody can write on the chat box what is important for Denmark, and public or private, and what is important in Pakistan. Yes,
Yeah,
please
exactly.
do it.
Then we're engaging in interactive play here. We are playing.
Yes, exactly. We're doing a quick quiz.
Yeah.
Pop-up quiz. So can you see?
Faisal Qureshi, family and friends, where are they important? In
Just
Pakistan
write
or in
first.
Denmark?
So just write it, please.
Yeah. Here comes Sanya Fayez, Pakistan family. Exactly. And that is, of course, because Pakistan is a very family-oriented society. That is in the tradition. That is in the traditional culture, that family is important. And friends in Denmark, yes, to some extent, but what is more important in Denmark? Asim, what is more important in Denmark? And Hans, what is important in Germany?
Yes, Hans can tell. You speak, put your speaker on, Hans. And what about in Boston?
Yeah, workplace, maybe, yes. What we actually see when we do this kind of study. And yes, Faisal, in Germany, maybe beer important, but actually you should know, Faisal, that right now, the bars in Germany are closed, I think. At least in my country, they're all closed, and people are going crazy because it's no fun drinking alone.
Oh.
Yeah, Faisal. Too bad, huh? Anyway, so, but what I'm using this little play with is to say that we actually do comparative studies. We do comparisons among countries to see how is this networking influenced by the wider culture that we are in, and we've already discussed some consequences of it. And what we actually find is that this private, oh wow, Kevin, you're onto it. Yes, Kevin, absolutely right. In the United States, like in Denmark and in Germany, the professional contacts are very important, but they're less important in Pakistan. It's not because there are fewer professionals in Pakistan. Even those that are in Pakistan, they're used less. What is important is the underlying culture that even says that you can trust your family, but you can't trust professionals, for example. So
we have Veena from London as well.
What?
We have from UK, Veena from London. We can ask her what is happening in London. You prefer public sphere or private sphere, Veena?
I think this is Assalamualaikum, and it's a wonderful lecture going on right now. I think there is more of a public one at the moment. We are trying to go for more private, but it's more public.
Yes,
okay,
it
great.
is more public. It is more
in UK.
public.
Yes.
Yes, also in the UK, because we have collected such data from around the world, and we're approaching the end, Taskin. I think we have one or two more. Next one, Taskin.
And we have another
Hello,
friend,
Assalamu
Dr.
alaikum.
Zubair. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello,
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes. Can you just please wait till the finish? Okay. Indeed.
At
Yes.
first,
Please,
you heard me. May I speak to you, please?
where are you speaking, please?
I'm from Somalia.
Oh, great. Somalia. Wow. Wonderful. So Africa. So can you have a quick comment, please? Quick one. Yeah. Well, you want to say
Yeah,
something?
of course.
Okay, quick one.
Yeah, of
Otherwise, the
course. Although I'm not here real well, but I'm saying to you, have a nice Ramadan.
Okay. So can you please wait for a few minutes, then we finish the session. Okay.
Yeah,
Please carry
I'm
on.
almost
Abdullah
done.
sahab, mute kar. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost done. I just want to alert those of you who are researchers for an easy entry into all this here. The best book that is readily available is also an e-book, and it's among the less expensive books. It's a book called Analyzing Social Networks. And it actually matches the software. There's a software that is both for visualization and for quantifying such a network. It is a network. It is a package called UCINet, and you can find it on the web. You can actually download it for free and use it freely for a while. The name of the book. There's a question from Saeed Shaikh. The name of the book is written on the screen right now. Analyzing Social Networks.
By Borgatti.
Yeah. And the third thing I'm going to alert you to is that data are available. There are data also from Pakistan.
Yes.
And Shahid has been analyzing those data. I have also. But there are lots more things that can be done with those data. There are data available from Pakistan, from Denmark, from India, from Iran. So you can analyze your neighbors, or you can analyze my society. And about 70 societies around the world. So it opens up for possibilities to actually investigate what we have just been discussing. Which kind of networks are important in the different kinds of societies? What is important in traditional society? What is important in the kind of society that I'm in? These data are available. You can download them in SPSS format from that website that I've listed here. Completely free, readily available.
Wonderful.
So that is, then I think there's one more slide, Taskin. I started out showing my son. So let me also end with showing my son.
Great.
I had to find a cute little picture for the end, right? So that's it now. That's what I wanted to say. And I think
wonderful. It's Thomas. It was a great, I think, learning. I was very well engrossed in what you were saying, and I'm so much thankful to you. And once again, we have a lot of guests. I have my friend Dr. Zubair Ali Shahid, who has his PhD from Australia, and we have been in searching for him for the past 1 year. And then we have a lot of people. Dr. Fariha from Lahore. She is a PhD in entrepreneurship education. So we have a lot of good people here, and so we can have few questions from Thomas. And I'm so thankful to him that he's such a loving and caring person, that he seems to be a fatherly figure in networks. So, Thomas, do you also? What is your advice on what shall we do? How we have to be polite? We have to be loving and caring and smiling to make networks. What shall an entrepreneur do on the street?
I think the entrepreneur has to offer something also to the people that the entrepreneur is asking for something from, because people don't give advice or help freely, typically. So the entrepreneur also has to give something. And the entrepreneur, we are sort of often brought up with that we have to protect our ideas. We have to protect our ideas and be careful that others don't steal them and run away with them. But if you want something from somebody, at least in my society, you also have to give something. And it probably also holds among entrepreneurs that if you want to even ask somebody for advice, you have to make yourself at least interesting. So you have to be prepared to tell about what your business idea is, and not be too fearful that others will run away with it and steal the idea.
Very good. So you should be loving, caring, and helping others, and that mindset will lead and ensuring, and rather than being selfish. Wonderful. So you can ask questions. Please keep on asking some good questions from Thomas about networking. And before we, so, there's some research questions coming in, but I would expect some generic questions first. And anybody. So Madiha from Bahawalpur, another city in the desert, she's saying that as building trust is the function of time. In your point of view, how can a startup entrepreneur earn the trust of his network members to get maximum innovation and by dexterity? How to build trust, especially for women entrepreneurs? Yeah.
Yes. I think especially in countries like Pakistan, in traditional societies, trust is something that is within the family and close friends. The Chinese have a word for it. They call it guangxi. Guangxi means that you trust your family and close friends, but nobody outside, and you do all your interaction. Like innovation within that guangxi network. And what we find by comparing innovation in China and in Denmark, for example, and comparing the networking in China with the networking in Denmark, we find that actually the Chinese lose out because their networks are very limited. So we do see that network effect, the effect of having very limited networks is very detrimental. And I would guess, I have not analyzed the data from Pakistan, but I would guess that the same problem exists in Pakistan. Because the networking is so family-based in Pakistan, and the trust in others is comparatively low. Trust in institutions, trust in people outside the small circle of family and friends. So how to build it? That was the question. I would guess that it requires risk willingness. You have to put yourself out and be willing to share your own knowledge when you seek knowledge from others. And then slowly build up the trust. Trust cannot be created by contract. It does require time and investment and risk taking. And that is can be especially a problem for women. That was the a particular question from one. That may be especially problematic for women in a traditional society that is male dominated. What some societies do, and also it is done in my society, that otherwise proclaims to be very gender egalitarian, is to create women's circles, women clubs, support networks for women. And that way, we know that women can actually become more innovative through such networks created often by women for women. And in my country, there's actually a very deliberate effort from policymakers to support such networking, because actually you may think of Denmark as a very gender egalitarian society, but it's not. When it comes to entrepreneurship, there are twice as many men who are entrepreneurs than women. So women are at a disadvantage because men, also in my society, prefer to talk with men. So women are often excluded from the networks because they are so male dominated and men talk with men. That's the homophily effect that I talked about before. So what policymakers are doing, not to promote gender equality, but to promote economic growth in society. They consider women to be a resource for growth. So they want to promote women to participate in entrepreneurship, and what they support therefore is networking among women for women.
Great, great. So there are a lot of interesting questions coming up. So they're saying that one person, my friend, I think he is Ubaid Ali. He's asking that how can an entrepreneur grow the trust of his contacts? So I think you have already answered. I think
Yeah.
That how to get the. You have to be open. You have to be friendly. You should be ready to give. You should be having giving mindset, and then people will trust you. That and okay, great. And some other friends asking Suhail Ahmed, what should a startup business do in this context? Startup people are fresh and new people, so they have to build a network. So what shall they do? Young people.
Yes, that is very difficult for a startup because they have very little to offer.
Oh, yes.
So it is very difficult for a startup to build a network. What we see is that successful entrepreneurs actually build up a network before they even start the business.
Exactly.
They build up a network. So we think about a business starting the day it starts doing business. But no. I would say the business actually starts much earlier than that, when the entrepreneur is networking. So the entrepreneur can rely on family and indirect contacts, rely on teachers, maybe rely on people in the workplace, because an entrepreneur starting a business or going to start a business is typically working in a place. So build up contacts there. A starting entrepreneur is in great difficulty because the starter has so little typically to offer others.
Great.
It's like a researcher. If I'm a small researcher, I cannot go to a big star. The big star is just going to ignore me.
Yes. So another question is that how to get along difficult persons in the professional circle. He's a star. How to reach a star? So how to reach Thomas? How to reach Thomas Schøtt?
Well, I'm going to be in a nursing home in a few years, so that you can find me. I'm stable.
But, how to reach Kevin? How to reach Hans and Bina Luck? So I think I can write a paper now.
Yeah. There was a question before. That I just captured very, very quickly. It was about promoting equality and peace.
Okay. Oh.
And there are actually some very interesting discussions going on right now, because the United Nations has set up some development goals to be pursued in the near future. It set up those goals before the epidemic came. But now with the epidemic, everything in society is becoming reorganized. And what we see is many businesses stop, they go bankrupt. Other businesses have to reorient themselves to a new reality. And the thing that is interesting in, sort of from a more sociological perspective, is that a crisis opens up new opportunities. There are opportunities, and people become more socially conscientious. So it's not only business opportunities that open up, but it is the very foundation, the moral foundation, the value foundation of society. We see people questioning capitalism. And this is not I'm not here to propagate my own personal opinion about that, but I witness it. I witness it on, for example, LinkedIn. I witness it on Facebook. I'm staying at home, so I really don't have many sources. I see it in my newspaper. that people are questioning the very foundation of society. And what that implies is there are opportunities opening up. And it is partly opportunities for what we call social entrepreneurship. And for existing commercial businesses, it goes under the label of corporate social responsibility. We see a much greater attention to those issues these days. So there is a movement. You can call it a movement. Yes, I would call it a movement. I haven't thought it through, but it seems like a rather global movement among people to become more socially conscientious, and for businesses to become socially conscientious. I know businesses in Denmark that have been punished in the public debate for ignoring social issues. There's a millionaire in Denmark who has been criticized for not paying rent on his many shops. His many shops have closed now, and he has said, well, during this crisis, I cannot pay rent. Screw him. He's a millionaire. Of course he can pay rent. So the interesting thing is that he has been criticized very strongly in public, in the media, for his for displaying such bad behavior, immoral behavior, people say. It's still not my own opinion about it, but I witnessed the debate that is going on. So what I'm saying with this is that opportunities are being created even in a crisis situation.
Oh, yes.
And of course, there will be entrepreneurs who will spot such opportunities. So a final advice to entrepreneurs, even in this time of crisis, is try to spot the opportunities that open up. And it can be many of these opportunities will have a very strong social, environmental component.
Very good.
So thank you very much, Thomas. It's a very comprehensive answer. I would like to request my international guests, Kevin, Hans, and Bina, if they would like to comment something for quick comments. Kevin, please. Please share your.
Sure.
Kevin is a faculty member at Babson College. Yeah.
Yes. So, and Hans has heard this lecture before, but I often talk about the 4 attributes of an entrepreneur as being heart, smarts, guts, and luck. And the heart's for the heart for the passion to start something new, the smarts for a smart strategy to take advantage of that opportunity, the guts to operationalize it. But this last one is luck. And luck comes from, I showed up at this event and I was lucky to meet this person and we had the right conversation. So you get luck, you generate your own luck by showing up in other communities and meeting people and connecting with people and having conversations with people about what your need is or what solution you're trying to solve as an entrepreneur. And the more people you tell, the more people you meet, the luckier you'll get by meeting the right people who will help you. So I love what you had put out today in this. To me, I just define this as entrepreneurship is a team sport. And it doesn't happen by itself, and you need other people. And sometimes you have to have this serendipity to just be out talking with people about your idea and being lucky enough to talk to the right people. But you have to meet people. You have to connect with people.
Yes.
I love the whole story. I didn't have the theory behind it, and today you provided the theory behind all of that. So thank you.
Wow.
Okay. Kevin, I hope we'll meet at Babson College.
We certainly.
In Boston,
Where I work with Bill Gardner.
We'll find each other. I will send an email separately.
Yeah. Donna Kelly, yeah. Okay. And Hans, I may actually be working. Are you married with Uli?
Yeah, for 33 years.
Yes, I when I see your last name, I thought you might be the one. Okay, Hans. So we've had contact earlier.
There is a great story behind. I was asked by a student, oh, I heard about someone, he is working for a global entrepreneurship monitor. Her name is Uli, and she seemed to have the same last name as you. Do you know her? And I said to the students, well, we are married for 33 years and we talk sometime to each other.
Yeah. Nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
Hans, please.
I don't want to give a co-lecture. That was
a question.
That was so a question, or a key question when it comes to networks to me is, how do family networks react when the entrepreneur in the family fails and is heading towards bankruptcy? How do the family network function when it's close to bust?
I don't know of studies of that, but there must be. There must be, but I don't know them. But what I do know is that, and I mentioned this on the way, that families impose caution on the entrepreneur not to take too much risk, which would suggest that they abandon the business, or first of all, they would be careful not to get close to bankruptcy, and that they would downsize before bankruptcy and maybe sell, close before bankruptcy, so as to avoid the bankruptcy itself. But I don't know. But we can think about what are the consequences of being risk adverse.
Great. So once again, I'm so thankful for Zubair. Zubair is a PhD from Australia. Zubair, would you like to say something? And Faria, I will be asking Faria to say some words from Lahore. Zubair.
And maybe good evening in Denmark, or good morning. Thank you very much, Dr. Shahid, for organizing the seminar. Especially thank you very much, Dr. Thomas. I think you really gave a lot of good theory behind some of the questions that I've been asking. I'm actually working on a family business case study, just answering to Hans' question as well. I think it's a very interesting question, that how do personal family networks react? And our initial case study suggests that there is a lot of group-based interest initially, and then it suddenly switches to self-interest. Everybody goes into a very defensive mode and then try to save or think about their own assets and their own families, because it's not just one person, and then you have a full network of relatives and extended family members if they're involved in such a scenario. So we are looking at a crisis situation where a family business has gone through crisis multiple times, and the health of the entrepreneur, and he was at a age in his life where he couldn't get his health, in shape. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of interest around that in family business literature at the moment. And I'm personally working on transnational entrepreneurs, so looking at dual identities of entrepreneurs who are moving between Australia and China and how they socially embed themselves. So that's my question to Thomas, that how do you think entrepreneurs with dual identities can manage this challenge of, if they are between China and Australia and they're dealing with completely different societies, and they're still able to, trying to get the opportunity identification thing happening or the network movement, or managing their networks. So
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah. Also, families use international network. And in your case, I don't know the company, but I do know that there's a good deal of interaction, travel, and exchange of people, and people migrating from China to Australia. And relations have been good, at least earlier, between China and Australia. So we have the concept of the transnational entrepreneur, who may be a migrant or may not be a migrant, but travel frequently. And family businesses may be established by migrants. They actually very often are. So if such a business is established in Australia by Chinese immigrants, it should be fairly easy for them to maintain an international network. What we do know about these migrants is, of course, they will be exporting. The businesses that they export, that they set up, will be very often exporting to their country of origin. And they will be importing also quite often, especially from their country of origin. So these migrating entrepreneurs are actually more beneficial to national economies than what is often thought, especially here in Europe, where migrants are often looked down upon and thought of as mostly doing, here in Denmark we say pizzerias. But that is actually not true. It is what we see on the street, yes, but what we fail to see is the actually very great international trade that the migrant entrepreneurs are responsible for. Hence, you may know Hamburg as a hub for Iranian carpets.
Okay.
It's the European hub for carpets from Iran and perhaps also from Pakistan and neighboring countries.
Great.
I have a colleague who has been actually investigating how that business is, of course, run mostly by migrants who have come from Iran and who are anchored. What we say is they have a dual embeddedness, an embeddedness in German society and embeddedness in their home country, in this case, Iran.
Thank you, Rimba. This is what Dina is commenting, that in fact migrants bring a lot of new potential, experience and skills along. So migrants bring a lot of things. Okay, so the last comment, if there is any, Dr. Faria, she's a female. Dr. Saiba, do you want to say something?
Assalamu alaikum. Haan ji, bilkul. Yes.
Dr. Faria, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for providing me this opportunity. In fact, I was not well, so I couldn't attend previous lectures. But this was really good, and I am really thankful to the Professor Thomas, because it's really good to see Professor Thomas, Professor Hans, Professor Kevin, as we have given their a lot of references in our thesis, and we were reading their articles, and then obviously it's really good to see them in person. So my yeah, and then my question is when I talk about network, then mostly it's about women entrepreneurs, how they see the networks and how they build the trust. And then another question that comes in my mind is about the digital entrepreneurs. Like, people are not now going towards the digital businesses right now, so how they can develop network there. Because for example, in Pakistan, when during this time of pandemic, when there was a policy that people are allowed to do online business but not for the real business face to face, so all of the traders, they were apprehensive, and they told that it's not possible for us to do the business online. So maybe there is something missing at the side of networks, or I don't know how I should put the question, that during this time of pandemic, when all the businesses are going towards digitalization, how we can build the networks, or how we can develop the trust between the business to business and business to customers. So this is what it's coming in my mind. That's it.
Yes. Actually, maybe women have an advantage comparatively there, because when we use the internet, we don't see the other person. We may not even know the gender of the other person. So networking through the internet becomes fairly or comparatively gender blind. Okay.
Okay.
So there's you can think about a hypothesis saying that women actually have an advantage. By the relative gender blindness of the internet. As a twist on that, maybe even a stronger hypothesis. I'm not saying it's true, it's a hypothesis. But the hypothesis would be that because women have a disadvantage in the face-to-face interaction, the common networking, they will be more keen, they will invest more and be better implementers of networking through the internet, and do e-business and digitalize than men will, because men are so accustomed to having the advantage in the face-to-face.